January 1945. The island of Luzon burns under the weight of a collapsing Japanese empire. Explosions echo across the hills. Tracer rounds carve the darkness. Between shattered villages and flooded rice paddies, tens of thousands of Japanese civilians flee in terror. They are afraid not only of the fighting but of the horror stories they were told about the approaching Americans. For days, exhausted Japanese women wander the outskirts of the battlefield, some barefoot, some clutching infants, others so weak they can barely stand. Many spend nights hiding in ditches, ravines, or abandoned huts, surviving on muddy water and handfuls of raw rice. They expect the worst. They were told the Americans would kill them, torture them, or do far worse if they were captured. When they finally emerge, shaking and hollow-eyed, waving scraps of white cloth, the soldiers they meet are not frontline infantry. They are American military police. And what the MPs do next is rarely shown in war movies. They extend blankets, food, shelter, and protection to the very people the enemy taught to fear them most. This is the true story of how American MPs, trained for law enforcement and traffic control, became unexpected humanitarians in war's darkest hours. The first reports come from small villages on Luzon's west coast, places like San Fabian de Mortis and Rosario. As American units push inland, MP detachments follow, tasked with securing rear areas and preventing sabotage. But instead of saboteurs, they find women, grandmothers, pregnant mothers, and teenage girls stumbling from the jungle in groups of 3 or 4. They are half-starved, shivering despite the tropical heat, many collapsing the moment they reach safety. Contrary to propaganda drilled into them, they are not shot or arrested. Often the first MP kneels down, rifle slung behind him, and says with gestures, "It's okay. You're safe now." Others offer water and guide them away from the front. Word spreads quickly. Civilians are coming in, hundreds of them. The MPs become the point men for a humanitarian mission they were never trained for. Behind the lines, they improvise shelters using torn tarps, truck canvas, and spare ponchos. Old supply shacks, abandoned Filipino homes, and half-destroyed rice warehouses are transformed into temporary safe zones. Army-issue wool blankets, rough but warm, are passed out one by one. Often the MPs give up their own. Many women clutch the blankets like lifelines, pressing the fabric to their faces as if its warmth alone proves the nightmare is ending. Before medics arrive, MPs boil water, tear open rations, and hand out whatever food they can spare. They organize civilians by condition: injured, healthy, elderly, mothers with children. Guards are assigned not to control them, but to protect them from roaming Japanese troops who would rather see civilians die than surrender. The transformation is jarring. Yesterday, MPs directed tanks, regulated traffic, and arrested drunk soldiers. Today, they comfort terrified women who bow repeatedly, unsure whether kindness is real or just another cruel trick. These moments are not isolated. Similar scenes unfold on Iwo Jima, Saipan, Guam, Okinawa, and dozens of smaller islands. They appear in after-action reports, MP diaries, and oral histories recorded decades later. One MP on Saipan wrote that some women wouldn't look at them, crying in fear. One fainted when offered water. When she woke under a blanket, she held his hand and refused to let go. Another MP described finding women trapped in a drainage culvert for 2 days, too weak to climb out. MPs pulled them free one by one and carried them on their shoulders to safety. On Guam, MPs used their own helmets to scoop water from streams for dehydrated women who could not walk another step. These were not one-off acts of charity, but repeated patterns as the Pacific War pushed deeper into civilian territory. Japanese civilians had been fed years of terror and misinformation. Many women initially refused blankets, bursting into tears when MPs approached. Others bowed so deeply that MPs grew uncomfortable, unsure how to convince them they were not prisoners. Yet the compassion persisted. These soldiers understood something essential. Civilians were not the enemy. Slowly, fear dissolved into relief. One MP on Luzon recalled a woman touching her blanket again and again, as if unsure it was real. The blanket became a symbol of safety. Shelter, patched together but secure, became the next. Inside these makeshift spaces, women finally slept, some for the first time in nearly a week, their bodies giving in to exhaustion. By the second day, MPs coordinated with civil affairs units and Filipino guides. Translators helped explain American intentions, locate lost children, distribute supplies, and move civilians away from active combat zones. Another challenge soon emerged. Some Japanese soldiers hid among civilians, hoping to slip through MP lines. MPs searched bags, checked for weapons, and separated military-aged men, all while continuing to hand out food and blankets. This balance, firmness without cruelty, control without intimidation, became the hallmark of MP units throughout the Philippines and beyond. As one sergeant said, they didn't come to hurt civilians. They came to end the war. Over time, trust grew. Some women even assisted American units, pointing out minefields, abandoned hideouts, or locations where wounded civilians were still hiding. Kindness built a fragile bridge amid chaos. Each new civilian reminded MPs that behind uniforms and propaganda were human beings, widows, mothers searching for sons, elderly women refusing to abandon family. And in every encounter the same gestures returned. A blanket over the shoulders, a cup of warm water, a calm voice saying, "You're safe now." Nowhere would this dynamic become more visible or emotional than on Okinawa, the bloodiest battle of the Pacific. For weeks, caves and hillside bunkers hid entire families driven underground by bombardment and indoctrination. Many women clutched grenades issued for suicide. Others carried bamboo spears, convinced they would have to fight. Okinawa was a nightmare of smoke, broken limestone, and shattered villages. Yet behind the infantry lines, MPs screened civilians, guided them to safety, and offered the same blankets and shelters that had saved lives elsewhere. Journal entries tell a consistent story. Women emerged from caves covered in soot, hands trembling, expecting death. MPs approached slowly, rifles slung behind them, offering water first, then blankets, then a place to sit. One MP recorded a woman carrying a baby no bigger than a loaf of bread. Both were shaking. The baby had no clothes. He wrapped them in his own blanket, and the woman cried, not from pain, but relief. Relief came so suddenly that many collapsed when they realized the Americans would not kill them. Another MP recalled women hiding so long in a grotto that their eyes could barely tolerate daylight. When they recoiled in fear, he laid blankets on the ground and poured warm water into cups. Hours later, one woman pressed her forehead to the earth in gratitude, leaving the MP overwhelmed and shaken. Across Okinawa, civilian camps sprang up in cane fields, ruined homes, and abandoned schools. MPs managed them with discipline and compassion. Blankets became symbols of protection, not currency, but reassurance. MPs often gave up their own gear so elderly women could sleep dry. Rain turned the ground to mud, yet they continued distributing supplies, organizing shelters, and coordinating with medics day and night. Makeshift kitchens were built from oil drums. Food came from rations or captured stores. MPs reassured women terrified that surrender meant dishonor, prison, or death, explaining with gestures that surrender meant survival. Some MPs learned simple Japanese words. Daijobu, it's okay. Mizu, water. No more fighting. The communication was imperfect, but it was enough to ease fear and save lives. As crowds grew larger, MPs prevented civilians from wandering into battle zones, intercepted hidden soldiers, and protected women from being mistaken as threats by nervous infantrymen. In one documented case, starving women approached a checkpoint waving a white flag. A frightened soldier fired a warning shot. The women collapsed, screaming. An MP sergeant ran between them, shouting to hold fire. He personally escorted the women to shelter, handed them blankets, and stayed until they stopped shaking. Courage in war is not only charging hills, but kneeling beside the terrified and offering safety. Across the Pacific, These interactions quietly shaped the occupation and peace to come. For many Japanese civilians, their first experience with Americans was not violence, but kindness. A blanket, a warm drink, a sheltered place to rest. One Okinawan woman later said they were told Americans were monsters, but when her grandmother received a blanket, she cried and said they must be human. Survivors remembered MPs who never raised their voices, even as exhausted civilians collapsed before checkpoints. MPs simply lifted them, carried them to dry ground and wrapped them in wool. These gestures did not end the war or undo the destruction, but they mattered deeply. They saved lives lost to starvation, exposure, and fear-driven suicide. They challenged propaganda and planted seeds for reconciliation. By war's end, tens of thousands of Japanese women had received aid from American MPs across the Pacific. MP diaries reveal a truth often overlooked. War is not only brutality and battles, but small mercies that ripple far beyond the moment they are given. One MP wrote on VJ Day that he expected to fight soldiers, not carry crying women from caves and give them blankets. Yet he was proud of that more than anything else. Another wrote simply that they were tired, scared, and needed help, and that helping them was all that mattered. Today, these moments rarely appear in textbooks or films, overshadowed by violence. Yet they remain vital reminders that even in destruction, humanity can endure. American MPs were not saints or heroes by legend. They were ordinary soldiers who chose compassion over hatred in extraordinary circumstances. And for countless Japanese women, a single blanket from a stranger in uniform meant warmth, safety, and a future. In a world at war, that simple act was a miracle.